What's up, everybody? How's it going? So back in August 2020, so about 4 or 5 months ago, I posted a video that was kind of dramatically titled, I just became a millionaire at 25, how does it feel, or how it feels. And in that video, like the title suggests, I basically explained what it felt like to have hit the $1 million net worth milestone at 25 years old. And in this video, I'm 26 now, by the way, but in this video today, I wanted to talk about basically how I reached that milestone relatively quickly. Because if I think back to when I started my wealth creation journey, the starting point would probably be at age 22 when I had my first full-time job. And I started with a negative net worth of about $30,000 because I was $30,000 in debt, student loan debt from college. And so, yeah, I wanted to share with you the 5 things that I did that I think are the most attributable, or that I can attribute. What am I trying to say? The 5 things that I did that I think are the most important things that helped me reach this milestone relatively quickly. And hopefully, you can find some insight in these. I will say they're not like rocket science. You've probably heard of these things before, but I do think that they're worth repeating because at the end of the day, they are really important and they will help you if you apply them and if you follow them in your own wealth creation journey. But so with that, let's jump into the first thing that I did, my first piece of advice for you here, which is to land a high-paying job. Now, wait a second. I know that some of you might be like rolling your eyes thinking like, okay, first of all, that seems obvious. I said it's not rocket science, but also it just seems a bit like, oh yeah, to make a lot of money, get a high-paying job that pays you a lot of money. Sounds a little bit like tautological, but I do think that it is important because if you think about it, when you start your wealth creation journey, you are at a net worth of 0 or even negative net worth, at least for most people. And so to do some of the other things that I'm going to talk about in a second, like investing, you need to generate capital. Like if you do not have any capital or any money, you won't be able to grow wealth, right? It's pretty obvious. And so if you can get a high-paying job very early on in your career, in your life, that will really set you up for success. And so more important than even starting your own business or getting into, specialized investing tactics or whatever, more important than those things is to get a high-paying job, in my opinion. It's the easiest, fastest way to start your wealth accumulation journey. And so for me, obviously those high-paying jobs were my 2 software engineering jobs at Google and Facebook. And so I always recommend to people who are young, who are like in college or in high school, or even after their college years, who want to make money, a lot of money, like relatively fast, because maybe they don't really know what their passion in life is or whatever. I always recommend software engineering because it's a field where you can get a very high-paying job very early on in your career. And so on that note, if you are a software engineer looking to land a job at a big tech company or a tech startup, then you're going to have to do well in your coding interviews and your systems design interviews, and you're going to want to check out my company AlgoExpert. Go to algoexpert.io and use the promo code CLEM, C-L-E-M, for a discount on the platform. Okay, so the second thing that I did and that I would highly recommend that you do if possible, and this is probably something that you do not know about me because I don't think I've ever mentioned this on my YouTube channel before. But basically, I lived with my parents up until very recently last year. During the first 3 years, 3.5 years of my career, and even longer if we talk about, straight out of college, because I had 1 year before I landed my first job, during all those years, I lived with my parents. Now, I realize that this is something that not everyone can do. Not everyone has the luxury of being able to live with their parents for various reasons, but I was able to do that. And I made the sacrifice of doing that because I thought that financially it would set me up for success, financial success, and it did. It really did. The best way that I can explain this is just if you take a normal person, for the grand majority of people out there, their biggest expense in life, their biggest cost, is going to be rent or their mortgage payments if they actually own their home. And so imagine if you could remove that entire expense or cost for some period of time, like your early years in your life, in your career. If you could do that, that means that you could effectively increase your income, increase the amount of money that you take in, that you put in your pocket, and that you can then later invest, and again, we'll get into that in a second, you could increase it by so much. And so here, genuinely, I would really recommend, if you're someone who can do that, if you have the luxury of being able to live with your parents during your early career, I would definitely do it. It is really one of the best things you can do for your financial success. I realize that it might not be the most fun thing to do. A lot of people view it as a big sacrifice or step back in life, although this probably mostly applies to people who are in the US, maybe in Europe, because I know that in other parts of the world, like I've spoken to people in India, for example, or in Southeast Asia, who've said that to them that's actually a normal thing. Like living with your parents is something that's totally normal, not really taboo. But in the US, it's a little bit different. It's usually kind of looked down upon, and I just think that it shouldn't be. And I would really recommend doing that. That's what I did, and I think that that's one of the most important things I did to reach that $1 million milestone at 25. Now, the third thing that I did, and this one is very similar to the previous one, basically, during the first 3.5 years or 4 years of my life after college, and even to this day, I continue to do this, I lived well under my means and spent almost no money. I spent as little money as possible. So basically, what I'm saying here, what I'm recommending that you do, is that you try to minimize your spending and your sort of lifestyle cost or baseline cost as much as possible. It's similar to the rent thing. If you can avoid paying rent, then do so. And here, just for everything else, try to not spend or to spend as little as possible. Again, the outcome is kind of obvious here. It's just the less money that is in your pocket goes out, the better, and the more quickly you will be able to build up your wealth to reach that $1 million milestone or whatever other milestone you might be looking to reach. Now here, I was particularly lucky by working at companies like Google and Facebook that really pamper their employees, because they give you, Google and Facebook, they give you food for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, all the food that you might need. And I was really taking advantage of that when I worked there. So what that meant is that for the first, 2 to 3 years of my life, basically, or when I say my life, I mean, after college, my wealth creation life, so to speak, I was literally not spending anything. There were months on end where I would literally have no amount of money coming out of my bank account. And, again, I realized that that's a big luxury, but that was just super helpful for me. And otherwise, like I said, I just didn't spend that much, lived a very simple lifestyle and all that. I will say, by the way, just that this is the really nice thing about having no rent, if you can have no rent, is that because having no rent gives you so much more income, especially if you live in a high cost of living area like I did, where rent would have cost tons of money, that means that you can actually kind of allow yourself to splurge on occasion and it won't really affect you. So for example, let's say you want to go on a $5,000 vacation, which is very expensive. Most people would say, okay, I'm not going to go on a $5,000 vacation. I can't really afford that right now, or I shouldn't afford that. Well, imagine you're not paying $2,000 to $4,000 in rent for 12 months, then suddenly it's okay, you can't afford that, right? So that's what I kind of mean, that if you don't have the rent, you can actually allow yourself to splurge a little bit and not feel bad about it, not really be affected by it. Okay, so the fourth thing that I did and that I think everyone who's looking to build wealth should do is investing. I hinted at that a few times before, but it's so important to invest your money. And by investing, I don't mean just letting your money rot away in a 1% savings account where it's effectively going to be devalued because of inflation. No, I mean actually investing in assets. And here, what I did, this is not financial advice or investing advice, this is just my philosophy. I invested in assets or things that are typically perceived as high risk, even though the irony is that I don't actually think they're that high risk. But I think that if you want to reach these certain milestones, wealth milestones pretty quickly, you're going to have to invest in some high-risk assets. And so here, I'm talking about stocks, which are supposedly high risk, crypto, that kind of stuff. But as an example, a lot of people will tell you, yes, individual stocks are high risk, be careful with that and everything. Let's be honest, investing in Amazon or in Apple isn't really high risk. And so for the last, let's say 5 years, if you weren't exposed to FANG stocks, Google, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Facebook, all those stocks, you were missing out on a ton of wealth creation, of wealth gain. So very important to invest. Now, the unfortunate truth about investing, though, is that it's really dependent on those first 3 tips that I gave in order to really take advantage of investing. In other words, if you just invest $1,000, you're not going to make $1 million. You might, over the span of 50 years, you can do the math with compound interest and all that. But the point is, you need capital to build capital through investing. And if you can invest a good amount of capital, if you can invest $1,000 a month, $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, then you're going to start to reap the rewards really fast. But so to maximize the benefit that you get from investing, you have to maximize your income effectively, the amount of money that you pocket, right? And you do that by getting a high-paying job, by avoiding paying rent if you can for a few years, and by lowering your spending. And so finally, this brings me to point number 5. Point number 5, the 5th thing that I did was I created my own business, Algo Expert. Now, of course, I realize that create your own business is not the best piece of advice, because creating your own business can be very hard. Having it be successful and actually generating income and all that can be hard. So the way that I'll frame it is try to find a secondary or even a tertiary stream of income. And of course, that could be creating your own business. And if you really do well with your own business, this could become the most important thing that you do in your wealth creation journey. At the end of the day, I think, I would probably attribute my success with Algo Expert to reaching that milestone, because that's what's generated the most wealth for me. Now it's maybe actually investing, but again, investing doesn't work if you don't have capital to begin with. But apart from creating your own business, you can do things like starting a YouTube channel, which is kind of like creating a business, right? It's monetizable content. It could be doing, things on the side, like, tutoring people or, helping people with some sort of skill that you have. And again, at the end of the day, those things all come down to kind of creating your own business and just finding different streams of income. And the idea behind this is that if you can supplement the income that you make from your full-time job, you will be better off. At the end of the day, there are very, very few jobs, full-time jobs, that will give you $1 million in 3 years. I would say probably most jobs will not do that, right? At Google or Facebook, I would not have pocketed $1 million post-tax in 3 years. So you have to supplement your income with additional streams of income, and of course, dump everything that you make, or most of it if you can, into investments, because that's going to be the thing that really doubles, triples, quadruples your wealth. So those are the 5 things that I did. Like I said, not really rocket science. You've probably heard most of these things, in some way, shape, or form elsewhere. But when put together, they are really powerful. They really come down to maximize how much money you make, minimize how much money goes out, right? And put that money to work by investing, ideally in higher risk assets that will give you bigger rewards. So hopefully you found some value in this video. If you did, don't forget to destroy the like button, smash it as much as you can. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you enjoy short form written content, follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter, Instagram if you like pictures, and otherwise I will see you in the next video.